Welcome into the SCC here, Smite fans. We're going to be starting off in North America today with Finch and Gore Miser. And Gore, it kind of doesn't matter which region that we're in. It is competitive right now. It is hard to know which teams are going to win, and which team to kind of bet your money on. Gore, what's been your read on the SCC in both regions so far?
I mean, exactly what you just said. The hard part has been teams we thought were going to absolutely dominate are trickling down towards the bottom. The teams that we didn't have any expectations for are the ones that are fighting for the tops. It's been a lot more interesting, especially in today's matchup. It's going to be that Herculean Hoofs versus Winter Dogs one. And that's another one of those that, again, is very more specific, where it's just you look at Herculean Hoofs and you don't expect them to be where they are in the standings.
No, you don't, and where they are in the standings is at the very bottom, as you're seeing here.
Dead last.
Three. But, like, there's three teams ahead of them with only one win to go around. The Sharks, the Tiburones, and the Sturdy Artisans are dominating everyone they play, and it's resulting in this big backlog at the bottom. So, yes, the Hoofs started off at a pretty bad spot, but they could be third by chaining 2 wins together, overnight. So, even though they've had a pretty bad start, one that doesn't line up with that talent that we know is on that roster, they could turn things around at any point. Though, I think it is worth noting that the most important spots on both SCC regions is top 2, and that's going to be hard to crack with both of them undefeated right now.
That's the part that's, like you said, very difficult to really tackle, is getting up towards the top 2. There's still a lot of time left. If I remember correctly, this phase goes until, like, June something. So, like, there's still, a month of play that they're going to be able to come forward with. But it's not a good start for you. And this is where things get very difficult. If you're the Herculean Hoofs here, the main goal is, one, to change your name to Hoofs so I can say it properly every time around, because I swear I have to swap between the two whenever my brain comes through. But 2, it's really just to get out of a rut and to not find yourself locked down. That's going to be the really hard part that comes through for them, is, I think, dealing with the fact that they have not been as prominent as I think they want to be and as we think they could be. I mean, like, Snoopy, Baskin, Masked, Meerkat, like, every player on this team is a great player, and that's why it's so surprising to see them not doing as well as we would have expected. We know that this is a team that, admittedly, coming into this, some of us were saying could probably tackle bottom SPL teams if they got everything together, right? But not anymore. Like, that conversation stopped happening pretty quick after we've been watching the SCC, because it just hasn't been holding up the same way, and they've not been able to hold up to some of these other teams. They pushed them to the limit. They've definitely given a lot of effort into this, but I want to start seeing some wins. This is a team that I have still high expectations for, and I think can absolutely start knocking it out of the park. They just got to get there.
Yeah, I mean, worth noting, that team has had a couple of games where instead of having, Gino in that slot, it's been Matt Yankee. I mean, they've had some things that are going on, but I think that we would have expected them to maybe have grabbed at least one win. Their opponents this time, though, the Winter Dogs, are a team that has managed to at least find one set victory here, has tons of talent. This is the Aqua, Crimson, Andinster, Gamma, UG roster with all that talent on it. Core, this is a team that I expect that if they're going to start turning things around, likely will be on how aggressive they are in the early and kind of building off that. Is that your read for this roster as well?
Yeah, this is a team that likes to get ahead early. I think that just fits Andy a little bit better overall, so a lot more pressure maybe on Masked on the other side to help deal with Andinster. But realistically, this is a matchup. Every time I look at these names, I kind of forget, but Baskin versus Crimson is going to be crucial. If you have an early game lead in your Winter Dogs, you can carry it into the late game. I think it's better for Andy, probably better for Yuji and Aquarius. But late game matchups, Baskin versus Crimson, both of them have been favoring things like the Yanis lately. Like, this is going to be a mid lane matchup, I think, at the end of this game. No matter what happens in the first, 15 minutes, the last 10 to 15 minutes of every game is going to be determined by, I think, the mid laners and how their performance is going to be. Andy has been a little more, I think, reliable overall in the jungle than what we've gotten to see, which is something that's good for them to be able to fall back on. But Crimson has been the big name, the flashy plays, and that's kind of what we've been getting, not quite as consistently, but still out of Baskin and what we expect out of Baskin. So that mid lane matchup, especially if one of them gets pretty far ahead and has a big impact, that'll be crucial.
Well, I want to see what they're taking into the mid lane and into every role. Let's hop into the picks and bans for game number 1. Looks like it will be the winner dogs in that first pick position. And as you kind of said, I think Giannis is someone that should be of high value in this set. We've seen a lot of North America valuing towards things like the Guan Yu, towards trying to ban frontliners out in particular. So wouldn't be surprised if that's something that's getting removed here as well. But they start off with this Apollo ban. It seems like these teams don't want to deal with Apollo and Chernobog in particular. That global presence is really difficult to deal with.
Yeah, I think yesterday we got hit with the Apollo, the Chernobog, and Heimdall getting banned out, and that was a very popular ban specifically against the Solar Scarabs. I think it was banned from Zapman 4 out of the 5 games in the SBL last week. So there's merits to a lot of those Hunter bans, but like you said, it feels more like these players are trying to, in this case of Winter Dogs, ban Apollo. Hey, we're not going to play him. We're planning on playing Chernobog. Lock in Chernobog, potentially first pick here, and try to get the Hoofs into an awkward position because they've gone I want to say, more targeted, right? Tsukuyomi is in that weird area where he's bannable, but he's not being picked up every game. It feels like a Herculean Hoofs strip that away from Mask. Scylla feels like a Baskin shot directly, and it leaves the Hoofs to ban out. Well, we don't want to deal with Athena. We don't want to deal with that. We don't want to deal with Tiamat. There's so many good picks available. Your Yamoja, the Chernobog that we were just talking about. Heimdall, who has proven himself to be a top pick, even though he maybe hasn't been the end-all, be-all in dictating things. But the Yanis we mentioned, the Onher that we got to see a lot in the Pro League last week. So much that is still on the table here for the Winter Dogs to go to. It's kind of hard to choose one to really lock in first.
Yeah, I'm not so sure either. We've seen a lot of teams prioritize Sobek early on in drafts.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of teams prioritize Guan Yu. I wouldn't be surprised if it is something along the lines of a frontliner that gets taken in first here. But there's so many good options you kind of already covered that I think you might really rather be the Herculean Hoofs in this spot, because then you get to take 2 sort of in a row, reacting to that number 1 overall pick that goes over to the Winter Dogs. But it is going to be the Giannis, and we thought this would be a highly valued pick between these two teams. Scylla, who's in a lot of people's mind the best mid you can pick right now, is been removed from that equation. So I suppose it does make sense for Winter Dogs to grab this Giannis, but not a lot of teams are prioritizing Giannis so highly they grab it right up at the top. Do you like it here being picked up?
I like it, but only because, like we had highlighted, there's so much available that I think this is one that, alongside that Scylla, you strip away Scylla from Baskin and you strip away Yanis from Baskin, you Crimson on something comfortable. In my memory, both Crimson and Baskin don't mind falling back onto things like the Thoth, so I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe see a mage like that come through. Again, there's a lot of mages right now, though, that they're pretty viable, maybe not always going to be near number 1, number 2 picks, but I think after Scylla and Yanis, you're going to start seeing a big threshold. Raijin's been pretty popular the last couple of weeks as well. And so you get a pick that's good for you, you strip away a pick, you do lose Sobek Guan Yu to the other side, so there is a big shift of scales. The thing I've noticed, at least in the last couple of weeks, Finch, is there's just so much good in this game right now, so many gods that are viable and playable that you lose, Sobek Guan Yu, if this is Season 7, we're in a point last year, I'm telling you, you've lost the game already. But there's still Yamoja on the table, Yanis was locked in, Heimdall's been doing great, Chernobog, Wukong, a lot of really prominent, warriors that have been available, it's just so hard to call right now. I would say Winter Dogs top 3 doesn't look as strong as it could, but all of those picks have been very prominent over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I am a little bit surprised that the Wukong gets prioritized so highly here, but we've seen this in North America. That means they're passing on, as you highlighted, the Yamoja being grabbed for that front line. So they've got a pick in the support role for this Winter Dogs team, for Gamma, that they're not worried about getting taken away. He might be falling down to an aggressive warrior pick that we know that's something Gamma might do, or even waiting a little bit later on to grab a more traditional support, like Xing Chen has been rising in value too. So there's still really good options for Gamma. There's just no options that use River's Rebuke and heal the teams and have Riptide and Stun at level 1. I mean, all that stuff now gone with Yamoja off the table. Plus, now Winter Dogs get to really try and limit what Baskin can do. You said the Thoth. I think that's something he certainly could drop to, but taking Morgan out of his hands and Scylla and Giannis, you're not feeling bad about that.
Yeah, that's the hard part. Again, there's just so many mages that feel viable and solid right now that you have to do that juggle and mental gymnastics. Which one do I ban out? I'm actually interested to see if they double target the mid lane. No, it's going to be Dan Zabur. And this is someone, we're going to get into this later, but I'm surprised to see him up there. Look, Chernobog's still available. He seems to be the one that's high priority right behind Heimdall and Apollo. So it feels a little weird to jump to someone that isn't really getting played that often. Of course, I say that, and now they're hovering Chiron, so everything's topsy-turvy.
It is. This Chiron being picked up. hopefully going to Snoopy. We might potentially be seeing some ADC mid stuff, but we don't see Baskin do that a whole lot, right? So I think it's pretty safe to bet that this will indeed be going over to Snoopy. And that's crazy. Snoopy is a prolific Chernobog player and a high-level Chernobog player, and also Chernobog can be anywhere. Yeah, a lot of good options there for him. But now it's Finmer selected. Is this potentially going to be going into jungle or support? Do you think jungle, with no jungle set up, but would you feel pretty good with something like this in your back pocket, letting some Guardians get banned up there by the Hoofs?
Yeah, it'd be solid. Of course, again, well, and this is where, like, that Kumba ban, it kind of hits question marks. Like, Ymir has just been better? Like, that's just an easy statement to make. Like, I could go into a Smite game right now, and if I have to choose Kumba or Ymir, odds are I'm going to choose Kumba for me because I'm tired of playing Ymir. I've spent so much time on him. But if I'm trying to win, I'm locking in Ymir 100% of the time. It's just a little weird to me to have that one come through. Fenrir should be pretty solid, or at least interesting to see over end of the jungle. The last 3 picks on the Hoofs, like, look, if you start Sobek Guan Yu, I've got some high standards for the rest of that draft. Merlin, I think, floats around that area based on what we've seen out of him in the past, but Chiron has a lot to prove. You could convince me that because the CHI is next to CHE, maybe you meant to grab Chernobog and just accidentally locked in Chiron, but I don't know. With Serket there, I think there's a lot of proving grounds in the bottom 3 picks for the Herculean Hoofs, whereas outside of Fenrir, I mean, Wukong, Ymir, Heimdall, Yanis, we've seen all 4 of those picks be pretty high priority for every single team over the last 4 weeks or however long it's been that we've been watching the competitive play. Fenrir has a very niche taste, but I think he's going to be solid here. It's going to be a lot of easy setup for someone like Yanis to really just easy damage, right? Like, I mean, good burst that's going to be very simple to secure. And it feels like the Hoofs are going to be playing uphill.
Yeah, and they've got this Merlin lacking that direct CC immunity. It's going to be a tough matchup into this Fenrir coming out on the other side. I'm excited to see how that's going to end up working out, though. How can Basket survive? Let's get it down to Dolson and Mifflin.
Winter Dogs versus the Herculean. Game number 1, Dolson, Mifflin, Doug here for what is promising to be a fantastic day of competitive Smite action. Mifflin, I got to admit, I think I'm most intrigued and most excited for the mid lane matchup here in this one. Baskin versus Crimson, a Merlin up against the Giannis. Should be some fun.
It's interesting, too, because I don't really associate Merlin, at least recently, with Baskin, right? I'm thinking of the Thoth, the Raz, I'm thinking of the Yanis itself, but not really this more objective-focused, burn-centric god. I'm really interested to see how Baskin decides to play around that early game. Generally, he likes to rotate into the side lanes, have his ganks happen. He almost acts as a secondary jungler for his team. I'm not sure that Merlin can really facilitate that style.
Yeah, Baskin, certainly high expectations now here on this pick. Same for Crimson as well, Miff. We've seen this rise of the Giannis, whether in the SPL, now down here at the SCC. We know Crimson can play this pick well. How does that kind of change a team's game plan, having a pick like the Giannis on your squad? I mean, really centering my question around the portals, the mobility, the ability to kind of change the face of a team fight seemingly in an instant. Does that require kind of more communication in your mind than a pick like a Merlin, where you just kind of hang back and pour out the damage?
Well, there's a couple of avenues of thought as far as Yanis goes. Are you having a Yanis that is looking to facilitate your team, using those portals to maneuver your squad? Or is it more so that Hurrywin style of playing that aggressive solo agent as Meerkat in a little bit of trouble here? Annitster working his way forward. Yeah, that's first blood, bud.
That trap was long set there. Annenster just hanging out, waiting for Meerkat to step just a little bit too far forward. And then the brutalize and the follow-up jump there, well played by Annenster, saving his jump for what was sure to be the execute, knowing that the gap close from the brutalize would be enough. So unfortunate there for Meerkat, but that's important, Miff, to get this Guan Yu behind early on, especially with the potential that we know that this pick has moving on into the mid later on in the game. So difficult to kill, that sustain, the healing, great for the team. And also getting Aquarius on this Sun Wukong off to a good start. Gone are the days of the Wukong just being a runaway kind of heal bot, right? I mean, this is a pick that can make some serious strides to pluck over onto Yuji, but the Bifrost will keep the Heimdall alive for the time being. The throwback, though, Snoopy gets Gamma a bit out of sorts, and now the auto attacks are just going to have to get it done. A great wall from Gamma, but another pluck is there, and Snoopy will end up picking up the first blood here for the Hoofs.
That's just a threat that Sobek brings throughout the early game, especially on such an immobile Guardian like Ymir. Pluck almost always going to be a death sentence, and Herculean and Hoofs pick 2 plugs for their lane. Snoopy able to use that dash and kick them backwards. Gino making sure that CC comes through just to find that kill. But you're right, I think that shutting down Meerkat in the early game is going to be a very big play for the Winter Dogs. If they're able to keep him out of these mid-game team fights, if it allows Aquarius to pull a lead and potentially steal blue buffs or rotate out a lane a little bit earlier on, I think that this Sun Wukong can really spell some trouble for Baskin in mid.
And one thing we haven't really talked on yet, Mifflin, is maybe the most interesting pick in this draft, and that's Snoopy playing Chiron over in the duo lane. I think when we've seen Chiron, it's been a mid lane more ability-based hunter, and Snoopy's going to pick that up over there in the duo lane here this time. Often don't see a Bluestone over in the duo lane, but maybe it makes some sense with the pick that Snoopy's brought out here in Game 1.
Yeah, he's going to be playing that exact style that you already alluded to, that mid lane ability-based hunter. Yeah, he's just going to do it over here in the long lane. Chiron, actually pretty strong right now. I really like his utility, the ability to cleanse out his team, with recent itemization changes allowing him to get that much more power inside of his build in Season 8. Means that his ultimate slams pretty hard. It's almost equivalent to the damage output that a Rom ultimate is able to put out, but a little bit easier to land, and you have the added benefit of at least a slight death immunity and the potential to revive. I think Chiron is a pick that is slightly slept on right now. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him a lot more in Season 8.
Lots of utility in that kit, to be sure. There was a attempted gank, or maybe just poking, showing some face there for Mast over on the left-hand side. Big Yuji was able to drop the crystal back, move his way away. Do you think, though, you know, the matchup into the Heimdall, a lot more traditional of a pick that we've seen here in Season 8 is this Heimdall. Just needs a little bit of time to get there. The arrow start helps with some of that gold, bridge that gap, get to that late game Heimdall build a little bit quicker. Do you think Chiron's in a spot, Miff, where you can keep up with what we're assuming will be a crit build from this Heimdall? You get Wind Demon, you get Deathbringer, and the auto attacks just are cleaving out serious damage. Is Chiron in a point where it's to be expected that you can maybe keep up with something like that?
As far as objective DPS or even just generalized DPS, if you're not building crit, you're not going to be able to match someone who is. Winter Dogs making a 4-man rotation over to the blue buff. They were able to invade it last time, but this time a little bit too slow in the rotation, not able to keep up with that timer. But keeping up with just crit DPS in general is going to be incredibly difficult to do. It's a play style difference. Expect Snoopy to really start off a fight strong as Baskin in a little bit of trouble here. Anister moving forward.
Wow, and Gamma's going to dive the tower as well. The detonate is in, and then through space and time is going to escort everyone out safely. The play around this Fenrir has been immaculate. Gamma a little bit late on the beads, but a perfect wall, but Mast there on the leap over, and then the Chiron snipes from Snoopy are going to be able to get this job done. So Snoopy has been there on the trade back kills now a couple of times, but it's been the engage from Andenster getting things done on the other side of the map. Gino might have enough damage to get it done here onto Crimson, but Andenster close by makes things a little bit more nervous. But the Vines there. There's some Vines playing a role, but Crimson portals right on through to Gino. Is he going to survive? Andenster grabs one kill. Gino does end up getting the kill onto Crimson, but these one-for-one trades happening all over the map.
Man, this Fenrir is swinging right now, isn't he, Dave? I feel like that Brutalize might have a couple more points in it than we might think. Maybe not. Seething Howl could be getting maxed out, helping out with that damage, but taking over for 200. Yeah, he is maxing Brutalize. Good lord. That is a slightly unorthodox playstyle, but it does make sense up against this draft. Really only on the side of the Hoofs, it's going to be Mast and Gino able to interrupt that Brutalize out, so that's pretty consistent damage on just about everyone else. I like this from Annister, and already we're starting to see it's coming to fruition. 2 kills for the jungler.
That's right. Love seeing kind of the flex pick and the Fenrir make an appearance here in the SCC. Saw it at the SPL level a little bit in week number 1. SPL back today, by the way, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Make sure to stick around after the SCC for some great matchups in the SPL. But we've got a good one here between the Winter Dogs and the Hoofs to get through first. Been kind of quiet out of the mid lane. Some happy feet there from Crimson. Got him in, out, and then right back into the fray. Gets the assist. Unfortunately falls. Baskin 0 for 1. Andenster early pressure into the mid lane has kept this Merlin behind. Maybe similar thoughts though to the Heimdall we have about this Merlin Myth. Maybe just needs a little bit of time, get some of those items online, and then that kind of sustained damage from the Void stance, from the purple stance, I guess, and the ice stance is really what comes online later on into the game.
Yeah, Merlin's certainly going to be able to transition incredibly well into the late game. I mean, I'm never going to sneeze at what the damage output that Merlin's able to bring. Annister getting caught out by Gino here as Herculean Hoofs getting that aggressive style behind him, moving into the red buff. Think better of it, of a defensive rotation from the Winter Dogs. I really like that both of these teams are consistently looking to get proactive. Earlier, we saw Winter Dogs making repeated attempts at invading the blue buff over there with Meerkat. Now, Herculean Hoofs getting their feet under them, trying to take away this red buff as well. Both of these squads are trying whatever they can to find these small leads and transition them elsewhere. And so far, not too much has really come of it. About 800 gold deficit in favor of the Winter Dogs, likely due to them just controlling the mid camps slightly better.
And Baskin, I think, realizes that Andenster is looking for those small advantages to kind of springboard this early lead into something a little bit more. Chalice of the Oracle picked up for the mid laner. So, kind of a small moment, small item purchase, but a bit unconventional there. Something that allow Baskin to stay extra safe. Just going to ward both sides of the jungle. One right by the red buff. One over there on the other side entrance on the right-hand side, or I suppose his left-hand side of that lane. It makes some sense with how active Andenster has been here in this early game. Mast has been there on a lot of counter ganks, obviously was there for first blood. Blue buff invade underway here for the Winter Dogs. Spotted out by a couple of wards, so this one will have been sniffed out. And look at the Hoofs, look at the reply. Everyone from the team making their way to the right-hand side of the map here. Andenster still standing on this ward, or a ward rather. It's going to get spotted out. Gamma just walks face first into the full 5 of the Herculean Hoofs. It's got to be a kill, and it's Masked who picks it up.
Snoopy's made every single one of these rotations, and it's their nice pluck from Gino. Going to be forced to use the ultimate to escape out of there. This ultimate comes through from Snoopy, but the damage not quite there. Fenrir going to be able to work his way outward, but Hoofs, 5-man rotation to the blue buff yet again, secures them another blue buff, and this time a kill as well. Gamma, a little bit too far forward with not enough backup, loses his life.
That's why you buy your wards, kids, and the Herculean Hoofs are able to sniff the invade as it's occurring from the mid lane. Plenty of time for everyone in the Hoofs to rotate over, and that's good micro play as well. Whether it just worked out or whether it was planned, everyone from the Hoofs went back and was able to rotate over to that side of the map. They didn't have to waste any time backing on the left-hand side, whatever it may have been. Well calculated if that was actually the game plan there from the Hoofs. Now, Winter Dogs needing to go searching for something else. Gamma has been on point with a few of these walls, but has now been the eye of 3 of the kills. What? Could be 4. A bit of a sidestep there from Gamma puts Crimson right in the way of that pluck. Now it's through space and time to get the Giannis out into safety. Snoopy's going to poke his head around, but won't end up going for any kills there. You're playing with fire there, Crimson, and held onto his beads. Through space and time will keep him alive.
Man, Gino's last 2 plucks have just been perfect, man.
I can't believe he
the one
hit that.
onto Andenster around the corner around Fire Giant, and then weaving it past Gamma there to find Crimson in mid. This Sobek is on point right now. Winter Dogs have to play very carefully once he's around.
Gamma underneath the tier 1 tower. Crimson does not have his ultimate, but he does have beads, so he'll stay alive. Mast took a massive amount of damage there. A little over half of his HP trying to dive the tier 1 tower. Gamma is playing very reactionary here, trying to rotate and protect the rest of his team, doing a good job of it here so far, but it feels like Gino maybe a little bit more proactive in setting up some of these fights. For what it's worth, hard to keep up with the engage potential of a Sobek, especially when the Hoofs feel like that they've been on the front foot here throughout some of the early game, though the Winter Dogs still nursing about a 900 to a 1,000 gold lead 11 minutes in. Been quiet over in the solo lane, though, Mifflin. Meerkat, Aquarius just been poking and prodding at one another, so the face of this game will soon change once the Guan Yu, once the Sun Wukong in their respective areas of strength start to join the fights.
Speaking of the soul lane, we're starting to see Meerkat falling slightly behind insofar as experiencing gold, and that's due in large part to these huge rotations from the Hoofs. Even around this last blue buff spawn, the Hoofs sent 4 people into the right side jungle, and they 2-split the buff itself. So Meerkat kind of naturally falling behind just because this heightened effort from the Hoofs to maintain that side of the jungle. They're splitting up a lot more, whereas Aquarius has been allowed to solo out his blue buff a couple of times. He's been taking out those back camps as well. They're really trusting the Sun Wukong to hold his own, whereas Meerkat falling down early has kind of forced his team to register that they have to be there and help him out.
Well, it's pretty quiet on the last blue buff at least, so Meerkat not falling that much further behind on the more recent objective. Still a greater Scorpion here on the left-hand side of the map. Snoopy 201 feeling more confident than Yuji. Maybe surprising that the Hoofs haven't put more of an emphasis on locking down the objectives on the left side of the map. Maybe that's exactly what Mast is looking towards now as he works onto the Greater Scorpion. That'll open up, that'll unlock the next boss. The Gold Fury will be out here shortly after that. Mast will take half of his HP as trouble, but if he's intending on going back to base or going back to farm anyway, no big deal. No harm, no foul. And then back to the purple buff. Grab Snoopy, that upgraded purple buff. And so this is maybe what you expected to see, a little bit more emphasis on the left-hand side. Gold Fury is going to be the first big objective happening here in the next couple minutes.
Should be, and I think that the Who's likely going to be trying to steal it away as quickly as they can. They've got the burn advantage with this Merlin, should be able to shred away that Gold Fury pretty quickly. Both teams lacking that conventional confirmation on the objective, neither one really having a huge burst ability. So I think that if anything, the Hoofs should be looking almost always to just force Winter Dogs to rotate over, maybe force that grouping, and then regroup themselves and retreat if there really is too much of a defense. But the Hoofs have got themselves a pretty decent position now where they can force the issue onto the Winter Dogs.
Right, you definitely don't want to have to use like a through space and time or a Ymir detonate to try to secure objectives. Those are too important team fight abilities to I wouldn't say throw away, but kind of use at will on something like locking down an objective. Though if the time comes, maybe you see one used as an attempted steal. Winter Dogs sensing the same things we are, Mifflin. They're going to poke their head right into this Gold Fury pit. Ward coverage down for both teams. And the Hoofs are going to slowly play around the objective here as well. Gino, maybe a bit of a looping pattern around the backside. It's the Oracles now secured for the Winter Dogs just to lock down that extra last bit of vision. So no Gold Fury will be snuck away just yet. Gino going fishing. It's this area where you have to be careful. Right around the Gold Fury timer. One big pick effectively gives that objective over for free, so both teams trying to bide their time until a big team.
Winter Dogs don't really have to concern themselves too much with the steal attempt from the Herculean Hoofs, or rather the sneak attempt. Now that they've confirmed the Oracles from themselves getting that vision, they also get to utilize Erupt Crimson out of mid. That mobility that he affords not only himself but his team as well means that the Herculean Hoofs really won't have an opportunity to go for that until that vision does wane away. Both teams now going to reset back to neutral, and this pace, I have to imagine, should be favoring the Herculean Hoofs. They have incredible late-game dive potential if Mast ever closes gap onto Crimson. Mans is just dead in the ground. They've got good confirmation around these objectives, space control as well.
Wow.
But this is exactly what's been happening, man. Gamma plucked again.
That must have been the max range pluck, but look at that, it turns around. Gamma gets the two-man freeze on the other end. Baskin uses the beats to stay alive under the pressure of the jungler. Meerkat, tier 1 tower dives. Gamma will pick up the kill there. Annenster leaps away, so now the Fenrir out of the fight for the time being. Aquarius joins the fray, but he'll have to leave as well. Somehow Baskin stays alive, and it's a killing spree for Snoopy. That fully stacked Transcendence feeling good for the Chiron here. Now the Herculean Hoofs turn their eyes towards the Gold Fury.
And that's that burn potential, man. That Gold Fury almost, before we were able to finish saying it rather, it goes down. Gino doing a good job just making sure Yuji can't work his way forward there. Winter Dogs, they just didn't burn enough of the Herculean Hoofs resources to fully commit to that fight off the initial engagement. Aquarius does close gap on a Baskin incredibly well. Finds the stun, immediately beads out. Gets him low, goes up in the air for the Somersault Cloud. Can't finish the kill because Baskin still has Aegis as well. That is a huge swing for the Chaos team, who've now almost entirely closed up that gold lead.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a big fight for Snoopy as well, adding another kill. You could see some of the auto attacks, though, from Yuji onto Gino. Gino was just there body blocking out the Heimdall. Maybe a steal attempt here from Snoopy,
Almost.
Just shy. But a little bit of chunk damage onto Yuji. Point, though, being, Miff, that we've got the Devourer's Gauntlet Executioner, pretty standard start there for the Heimdall. Couple tiers going into that Wind Demon. And Gino is already taking some pretty big chunk damage from this Heimdall, so we're starting to get to that area of the game where the Heimdall is going to start to make a big difference in a lot of these fights. Baskin, though, as well. Interesting build path here. Spear of Desolation, a little cooldown. Little cooldown reset, I suppose, on kills or assists. Another pluck onto Gamma might not give me the chance to finish this thought. Aquarius is going to rotate in as well. Both teams kind of playing chicken with one another. Meerkat's going to get freezed through by Gamma, but shrugs off most of that. The healing will supply him with safety. What happened there on the mid lane? Crimson gets killed off by the DOT, but now Anderson rotates into mid. Both mid laners now dead. Both junglers picking up the kills.
Now, Gino trying to move forward, doesn't quite find the pluck, and instead able to use the Unchained to avoid that one. A good trade, I'd say, for the Winter Dogs there, making sure that Baskin does get punished for having used both of those relics in the last team fight. Crimson, again, we were worried about it. The second Circuit's able to close gap onto him. That's an age-old counter matchup. Doesn't matter if you can walk through walls, you're taking the poison with you. Falls down easily. Does the Yanis, and now both teams with no POI really to move towards are just going to reset to neutral again. Neither one really pulls far enough ahead to work their way into the enemy jungle either. So it's going to be a net gain wash for both squads. Winter Dogs, however, are going to maintain their gold lead, but I'd have to imagine both of these teams now at the 18-minute mark should be keeping their eyes on that Greater Scorpion around the Fire Giant. Able to clear that one out.
Yep.
Is going to spawn two of the biggest neutral objectives in the game.
That's right, and you feel like this Hoofs team, you saw how fast they were able to do the Gold Fury. If a window opens with a composition like this around a potential early Fire Giant, this would be the type of team composition that could maybe get something like that done. And so that's something to keep your eyes on if you're the Hoofs, as well as if you're the Winter Dogs, because the Fury now a couple minutes back and waiting to respawn. Unfortunately, in that last fight there, Mifflin, it felt like both mid laners just that was the target, right, for either team, and when either team wants you dead, that tends to be the case. There's not much more Baskin or Crimson could have done, I don't think, in the previous engagement, but surprisingly enough, it seems like Baskin has been the one who's been able to stay alive a little bit more consistently. Just one difference in the death column, so not all that massive. But a 1.5, close to 2 level lead there in the mid lane. This Merlin has maybe hit its stride a little bit quicker.
And Merlin is not a more survivable god than Yanis, by the way. Yanis walks through walls with multiple abilities, slows enemies, and makes himself faster as well. Crimson just been struggling a little bit around these team fights. That wall, a little bit better than Gamma thought it was, throws out the freeze immediately in response to the sound effect. Doesn't quite need it, though. Snoopy now in a little bit of trouble as Anister works his way forward.
Yeah, for what it's worth, this is what's happening to Crimson. Mast is just walking at him in the backline every single time. Snoopy dodges out the detonate damage, but a good freeze and good follow-up by Aquarius will end up picking up the kill onto the Hoofs Hunter. Gamma now a bit caught out by 4 members of the Herculean Hoofs. He's going to fall down to Meerkat this time, 1 and 5 on the Ymir, but Hunter for support, and that's going to leave Yuji free and clear to farm up this right-hand side. Winter Dogs probably feel like they came out ahead.
Bro, how does Yuji even get over to the right-hand side of the map? That is the ADC. Hey, my man just walked on over. They killed Snoopy, and he said, word, I guess I'll go push somewhere else, and takes out about half of that Tier 2 tower. Winter Dogs, I would say, feeling very good about how that one goes down. Not only does Gamma die like 15 seconds after Snoopy, but he's still going to spawn first, and I'm trading out my support for a Hunter literally every single day of the week. Winter Dogs doing a very good job controlling this duo side, and this is what it affords them. They can start to work their way forward, get that vision advantage, and get ready for this Oni Fury once it spawns up.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of these team fights hinge on Masked and his ability to either kill off or TKO Crimson away from the fights. I mean, this Giannis just has not been able to participate. Look at the damage charts there. Big UG hasn't really done much outside of some pokes and prods at Gino around that Gold Fury. Just above that, Crimson, 3,700 damage compared to the 6,000 or so of Baskin. Again, not necessarily at the fault of Crimson. He's just been sat on by Mast, it feels like, every single time. So that's got to be the game plan, the continued game plan for the Hoofs here, is keep this Giannis out of the fight. We're going to get to see what could be the first big 5v5 engagement around this Oni Fury. The Winter Dogs are going to start up the objective with Gamma and Aquarius playing Separator. Freeze onto Meerkat, some follow-up damage from Aquarius, but the Guan Yu plenty tanky enough at this point to shrug off most of that damage. The objective has been reset, and the Winter Dogs are on the back foot.
Gino takes a lot of damage there, the most weakened one on the map. Could utilize the healing from Guan Yu to get him back and involved, but Yuji's been training out a lot of his health bar as well, just tanking up this Gold Fury, trying to create that threat. Keep your eye on Anister. He's already looped around.
Meerkat goes way into the back, but it's Snoopy that's been picked up by Anister.
Nice ult.
Snoopy ults himself to stay alive just a little bit longer. He's going to be able to get off some of the damage here, but it's Yuji who ends up finishing off the kill. Now Herculean Hoofs on the back foot while the Winter Dogs rage themselves forward throughout the rest of this jungle. Back is the Oni Fury. That's what the Winter Dogs will turn their eyes towards.
That's Anister through and through, turning that fight for his team, acting as a solo agent, working his way through the left-hand side of the jungle, routes the Hoofs, and finds his way towards the most priority target, Snoopy. With no beads available at the time, means that Ragnarok's a pretty good form of CC, locks him down inside the shards of ice, finds the pick, and then falls back to the gold 3 with their team. Winter Dogs playing clinically at this point, establishing a 3,000 gold lead. Fire Giant spawned as well. They can start to work their way over, but look at the Hoofs, Dave. They're there first, and they've already started the Pyro.
Yeah, they're going to likely get this Pyromancer for free. I think the player damage charts actually tell a pretty interesting story here, where as of right now, the Hoofs are ahead of every single player on the Winter Dogs, except for Aquarius, who is doubling up every other player in the game at least. So this Sun Wukong at 102 is providing so much of the supplementary damage that the rest of the team hasn't quite been able to catch up with, where the Hoofs probably feel like they're doing so much but haven't been able to finish off a lot of these kills here. It's a continued strong performance, Mifflin, from the Sun Wukong pick. Synergizes so well with Bluestone and that Bluestone Brooch later on in the game. So no surprise to see Aquarius performing well on the pick. Maybe a small skirmish here as Gino gets walled and frozen off. But instead, no kills happen, and the Winter Dogs just setting up a line around the FG.
They are, and the Winter Dogs are going to burn it pretty quickly if they give Big Yuji the opportunity. Deathbringer and Windemon both finished. He is going to be absolutely shredding this. Winter Dogs know all they have to do is create the space for him to work on it. 4 people zoning, and Yuji just soloing it down.
We've officially reached that point where Heimdall is scary, right? I mean, the Wind Demon's scary enough, now Deathbringer on the other end. Going to be so difficult to out-sustain some of the damage that he's putting out. No Spectral Armor's picked up just yet for the Herculean Hoofs. That's something to look at as well. Aquarius alone up in his Somersault Cloud will leap away, so that's a couple ultimates down through space and time got used as well, so the Hoofs now maybe feeling a little bit more comfortable contesting. But the Winter Dogs, Miff, they're going to buy some time, not start up the objective just yet, give Yuji a chance to sustain up a little bit on this Greater Scorpion, and then maybe turn back.
Yeah, we got to see there what happens when Gino steps in front of this Heimdall. Going for that much more utility-focused build is the Sobek, means that anytime he gets hit by anyone should result in a fair deal of damage. Heimdall, 2 auto attacks, both crits drop him down to 30%, but Gino goes back to base, undeterred, moves forward, and strips away the beads from Aquarius. Now, Sun Wukong, no CC immunity available, ultimate down, as are his defensive relics. I think Winter Dogs now have to make a decision. We can only really play proactively. Aquarius has to be the one starting up these fights, has to create the space for Gamma to find these walls, and then maybe, it doesn't really matter who on the side of the Hoofs they're able to isolate, should be able to find a free pick here.
Yeah, this next Fire Giant contest might ebb and flow based on the wave states. Left-hand side, it looks a little beefier for the Hoofs, so a slow push potentially, if any push at all. Literally every single wave is just chilling out in the middle right now. And so whichever team is able to clear, get over there, get that wave pushing is going to feel good, but the engage instead coming from the Winter Dogs here. Aquarius finds Snoopy in the backline. Sun Wukong soloing out the Hoofs Hunter, who's been left for dead. Anderson uses the ultimate, but no good. On the backside of this fight, Masto gets the kill over onto Gamma. All the backliners have just been left alone here. Mast with the bead stays alive, but Yuji will pick up the kill nonetheless. The Crystal out and away. We leave Aquarius all alone with Baskin, who finally had some Pio return and help him stay alive. Snoopy underneath this tier 2. Crimson could be fishing for a kill, but Snoopy will survive, and it's a 2-for-1 trade. The Hoofs come out ahead.
Man, Mast put on his cape there. Not only does he find the kill in the Gamma, but he zones Big Yuji from the entire fight. The ADC only really able to make contact with Mast. Sure, does cost him his life, but in exchange, the rest of the Hoofs are able to kill Aquarius and Gamma in the back. So it is a small skirmish win for the Chaos team, but it's going to take a much cleaner one if they want to confirm the objective for themselves. And as you said, with all the minions just kind of hovering around the center of the map, it's not as if the Hoofs can group up and take a tier 2 tower off of this. They have to win a fight incredibly cleanly at this point. The macro game, the map state, is completely even.
It's going to be what feels like the continued storyline here, where either Mast gets into the back line and forces Crimson or Yuji to just not play, or Andensur and Aquarius are able to do that a little bit more consistently. It's truly a game of which backline is under less pressure or can self-survive a little bit longer. It felt like Baskin was maybe able to do that a little bit easier early on into this game, but now the team fight phase has swung around and Baskin's been put under a fair amount of pressure. Snoopy has as well, has the ultimate if timed properly to get off that last little bit of burst damage. That's something to be considered as well. Meerkat improves to 2, 1, and 4 on this Guan Yu. So the sustain and the tankiness is absolutely going to be there and absorbing some of the pressure that's diving in Onto his backline. Player damage, though, Mifflin continues to be the same. Aquarius still doubling up everyone in this game. That's Baskin now, who's literally being doubled up. A small increase from Crimson, though, has put him right into the fray. But these top 3 from the Herculean Hoofs are all having to kind of combine to just match the damage output that Aquarius has done. Let's see what they're able to do here. In this next team fight, through space and time, catches onto Baskin, who has to flicker his way away. Annenster gets detonated, and it's Meerkat who snags the kill. No more Fenrir, and so no more backline dive now for the Winter Dogs, who have to retreat.
Man, Herculean Hoofs are just playing so much more confidently at this phase of the game. They're moving their way forward, they're burning away beads, and they're finding the picks in turn as well. They don't even have to commit too many of their own relics, really. Only Snoopy forced to use the beads in that last engagement, whereas Meerkat and Baskin both maintain all of their relics. They're moving into this next team fight not only with a numbers advantage, but a resource advantage as well.
Yuji will use the crystals and the beads to survive the onslaught from Mast. It's a freeze from Gamma. Some damage and a cleanse from Snoopy will usher the Winter Dogs back under their own Tier 2 tower, and the Hoofs will turn back around. It's the Fire Giant started up. 15 seconds left on the respawn from Annenster. No steal ultimate ready from Erupt Crimson. Halfway there on the through space and time. All beads down for the Winter Dogs here. Yuji uses the ultimate over onto Gino, and Aquarius overextends just a little bit too far. Winter Dogs one by one waltzing in, trying to delay the FG. They have not been successful in doing so. It's Gino who's under threat here, half HP while the FG goes down.
Did my eyes deceive me? Did Gino just immune Heimdall ultimate with his own pluck? Interesting interaction there, but at the end of the day, Dave, yeah, that's crazy, bro. That's insane timing if that were the case. Yuji obviously not going to be happy with how that one pans out. Had that ultimate come through, should have at least been able to pick up the kill on a Gino, but defending Fire Giant was pretty far out of the question, especially considering how long it took Crimson to work his way back to base. There was no world where even a Yanis was able to make to the Fire Giant with that type of back timing, and now Crimson forced to use the ultimate out of fear and then plucks him again? Gino's nuts, man. Gino is actually crazy, plucks him through the portal. It's just interesting interactions through and through.
Bro, look, I'm not above saying I have no idea what just happened. I have no clue what happened between the pluck and the Heimdall ultimate there. That was wild, though, the pluck through the portal. If anyone else was there from the Hoofs, would have been a lot more difficult for Crimson to stay alive. That's just got to feel bad, though, doesn't it? Where you look at... I mean, it's such an unfair comparison. One of the best, if not the best, current Giannis in the world, and Hurrywind and the team that he has built around him there with the Jade Dragons. But it's such a bad feeling you got to imagine for Crimson to have to defensively be using these through spaces in times, or through time and spaces, on kind of a consistent basis, where you look at the flip side, where what you want to do is engage, big shotgun blast of damage, then everyone flies through to follow up. Crimson just hasn't had that opportunity, it feels like.
He's found a couple of ultimates around the Gold Fury and Fire Giant where he is able to hit one target, but even with the build that he's going for at this phase of the game, he's not really dealing that immense amount of damage. He's not really finding that one-shot potential, and as you've already highlighted, man's been forced to use it defensively pretty often there. I mean, in that last fight, Gino just walks up alone and forces Crimson's ultimate out of him in exchange for his Blink, so maybe Winter Dogs do come out slightly ahead. Yanis ultimate now available, Blink still down on the side of Gino. Keep your eyes on Crimson, left side of the map going for a bit of a split push here, decides better of it, needs him there to defend the base, and Hoofs, they're not going to let this opportunity slide, already inside the Phoenix.
That's right, the Hoofs are just halfway away from getting the right side Phoenix down. Looks like Tier 2 tower and left will end up falling for the Winter Dogs with this wave, but it's Gamma who beads out the pluck from Gino. It's an up and down from Annenster, but no good on the back line.
Nice shot.
There's a big through space and time. Snoopy, 3rd HP on the back end of a big mid lane ultimate from Crimson there. A lot of defensive, a lot of offensive utility used by the Winter Dogs here. Gino and Snoopy say the same for them.
Rip.
Gamma into the ultimate, but that means he's rooted in place. Aquarius has found the back line, but he's also found 5 members of the Hoofs looking at him. Somersault Cloud to heal up, buy some time. Annenster blinks forward, but literally nothing there on the end. The Hoofs stick together and stay alive.
If the Winter Dogs can't move forward now, they might just have to give up this Phoenix. Hoofs making use of that Guan Yu and Fire Giant sustain. They should be able to work their way in here. Only Yuji on the defense. Man's got to play safe. If he dies, could be the game.
A bit of a split there. Crimson still stuck out in the jungle right now. He's going to have to go back to base or hope that he can re-engage on this fight. Surprise the Hoofs from behind. It's a leap, though. There's a ward there. Crimson gets through the portal, uses the bead, stays alive, but he's going to farm out this mid lane. the Hoofs aren't concerned. They're going to turn their eyes towards the Phoenix instead. Right side Phoenix down, mid lane Phoenix down, and leap from Mast over onto UG. And the Hoofs continue to play as a roaming death ball of 5.
And that's
Wait, Andy.
exactly what they need to do. Still, 20 seconds left on Fire Giant. Might as well take out a Tier 2 tower. You said they look unconcerned, Dave. What's there to be concerned about? So far, the Winter Dogs have been struggling to even assemble a 5-man defense inside these structures. Right and center Phoenix already going down. Fire Giant wearing off in 10 seconds. And the Hoofs pick up a Tier 2 tower for their troubles. Going to go back to base now. And because of the timing of these Phoenixes falling, the Hoofs can play as slow as they want to. Still 1 minute left on Fire Giant spawn. I'd say they've done enough. They could just spin their wheels until Fire Giant's back up.
That's right, 1 minute away from the FG. You would have liked to have gotten the left side Phoenix down if you're the Hoofs, so the silver lining is that the Winter Dogs on their way over to maybe contest the Fire Giant will be able to clear out some of these fire waves. Everyone in the game, except for the supports at level 20, but the supports have reached that pivotal level 17 mark to upgrade those starter items. That's the big pivot point here. So everyone in the game eligible and has taken advantage of the starter item upgrades at this point. So XP differential, non-factor. Feels like gold differential outside of some power pots, non-factor. Outside of the map state, Mifflin, you got to feel like this is maybe the most even fight we've had in a little while.
Yeah, this could be a good
bummer.
opportunity for Winter Dogs, but Yuji, kind of getting that Crimson syndrome, immediately gets spotted out and forced to use his ultimate defensively. We're up Crimson, trying to make some pressure happen on the map, at least pushing up the waves, so his base doesn't have to contend with these fire minions. Looks like, from the positioning from the Winter Dogs, they are willing to put up a defense around this Fire Giant. Easier said than done, though, 7,000 or so gold down.
So it masked with the Spectral Armor and Gino. The Spectral Armor can get done in the backline. Gamma, blink in, freeze, Banandenster searching for someone with the ultimate, but the disengage is good enough. Gamma being looked at now by Meerkat and Mask. The Ymir will survive for the time being as Yuji was able to weave out some auto attacks in between. Crimson used it through space and time. Oh, he takes the portal, but he's all alone here. Mask trying to take advantage. There's the mobility of the Giannis, keeping him in the fight, and right back towards the enhanced Fire Giant go the Hoofs.
Man, that Ymir wall placement was perfect. If it were any worse, he immediately falls to the cavalry charge. But huge blink in, triple knockup from the Sun Wukong.
Yeah, but where's the follow-up? He has to use the Somersault Cloud to stay alive. Crimson, Baskin, 1v1 on the backline, and Baskin comes out ahead. Down goes Crimson to start off this fight. Meerkat will whittle away the health bar, and Baskin grabs the double. Could be a triple on the other side, but instead Mast grabs the kill. The Hoofs find a pick. They find 3, and they might just find the game.
Gamma isolated. Final Hail Mary goes in the ice shards. Only buys his team a little bit of time there. The chase is on. Mask gonna be able to find that kill. The second one of the team fight in Aquarius.
No chance.
The lone member of Winter Dogs still alive. 1 versus 4? I mean, I've seen crazier stuff, but it's gonna take a miracle for Sun Wukong.
Yeah, 31,000 damage just won't be enough to get it done for Aquarius here this game. Baskin
leave
will
him
chase
alone.
him out of the base. While the rest of the Hoofs walk in on towards the Titan. There's no Snoopy to provide serious physical damage, but it does not matter. The Herculean Hoofs in 35.5 minutes will end up taking game 1.
The Hoofs looking for their first set win so far in the SCC, getting off to
How
the
does
right
this
foot
team
here,
not have
Dave.
a win?
That's how competitive
They're
the
so
North
good.
American SCC is. Yeah, they're nuts. Yeah, this is Baskin and the boys, now Herculean Hooves, and they're still trying to find that first win, but game 1 might be indicative of a good, nice shift for them in the season.
The game plan, I think, felt good, consistent, and strong there from the Baskin squad. They're going to take game number 1. Mifflin and I, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back with game 2.
Welcome back to the SCC. Finch and Gore here as the Hoops find themselves a Game 1 win. And Gore, from where I was sitting, this felt like, at least on the side of the Winter Dogs, they were a bit disjointed, and the Hoops took full advantage. What did you see, though, when you were watching this game?
Pretty much that, right? Like, you watch it back, and there's so many times where, at least like me and you were saying, like, okay, cool, Merlin's beads are down. Fenrir? Like, we never got to see Andy really, I think, capitalize on the, I want to say, lack of mobility, really, that you're going to be getting out of Baskin. Like, yes, he has that blink, he's pseudo-safe, but he's not going to be able to outrun you. I mean, you're Fenrir. You've got 3 versions of a leap and brutalize. Like, you're going to be able to get in there and close the gap. It just feels like Andy didn't necessarily take the early game lead that this team really could have gotten, and Crimson got caught out more often. And same thing for Gamma. Crimson and Gamma were kind of left to their own devices throughout this game. I think a lot of times, like, Gamma, again, and there were several times where you could say it was their positioning, and there were several times where you could say it was the team maybe leaving them out to dry. But Crimson, there was a point where he was split pushing the tier 2 at the very end while the Phoenix was getting sieged. There were periods of time where Gamma just was straight up in the wrong portion of the jungle, or the team just left him behind. It just, like you said, felt disjointed. Like, they weren't playing together as a unit. And even though they had a pretty early lead for a good chunk of the game, it really meant nothing going into the late game, because the Hoofs were just able to win. Like, for 28 minutes, Winter Dogs were technically in the gold lead and I think the experience lead. And then at 28 minutes, they lose a fight, they lose the Fire Giant, they lose all pressure that they could have had and possibly up to that point because of a bad fight. And the Hoofs just take control, and then from that point forward, the Hoofs start playing much cleaner than we had really gotten to see that game as well. They start playing more as a unit, they're grouped up as 5, and it just makes them a lot easier to really drill through everybody on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, it really felt like, to me, Crimson was never comfortable at any point in that entire game. I mean, they had almost the ideal setup, it felt like, coming into that game, and there were so many times when Crim was getting forced out by Baskin single-handedly or by Sobek single-handedly. They could not keep him in the fight long enough for Andy and Aqua to kind of set up for that damage to come through. I'm with you there, Gore. Things just were not working for him in that first draft. Let's see if maybe they can find some different pieces here in the picks and bans for game number 2. And they don't necessarily have to change everything, because I liked the idea of Fenrir putting constant pressure on Merlin and Giannis being there for the follow-up. It never came to fruition, kind of as because of what you were talking about, right? Gamma and Krim were on constant pressure from Mast on this Urquette, right? From great work from Baskin on this Merlin, and obviously Gino on that Sobek too. It was a little too much for them, and they couldn't quite handle it. So we'll see what the adjustments are. So far, no adjustments. Apollo and Athena still getting banned.
And it's weird because I think, like, I'm going to go back to it. Like, Winter Dogs draft was not bad. I think that is a winning game draft, like, especially against what they were playing against. I think that was maybe, like, in room for something like a salty run back, because, like, that just did not seem to be played to its maximum potential. And so far, I'm not, like, disagreeing with the bans, especially because the Hoofs, like, outside of, the top 2, they had the Sobek and the Guan Yu. That really did help kind of strengthen their case. Maybe, yeah, you take care of one of those, but otherwise, I think you had a good enough draft on the Winter Dogs that you're not too stressed out about going maybe a similar route.
Yeah, it just felt like maybe that wasn't the comp where Giannis is able to do his best, where you have Crimson functioning as sort of this solo agent so often that it felt like they never were able to come together as that whole to provide the damage when the setup was there. But it looks like they like putting Crim back on that Giannis. Listen, that one game is not enough for me to say that I don't like Crimson on Giannis in general. My man is good on this pick, but I didn't like it in that composition really at all, if I'm being honest with you there, Corey. It looked like it never was coming together for him. So we'll see if maybe the pieces around this Giannis or the adjustments the Winter Dogs make, or if they want to go back in with that same comp, maybe the playstyle has to be a little different.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that is a very standard pick that we've seen for Crimson countless times, but did not look good in that game. Like, just blanket statement, it did not look like it's something that I would first pick, and it did not look like it was worthy of the first pick. But it does still scream as something you want to take away from Baskin, so it kind of has the balancing point right there where you're going to be able to figure out, like, okay, well, it's technically a ban, and Crimson can play it. We saw good moments from Crimson, don't get me wrong, it's just he was alone. So even if it was a good moment, it didn't get to last longer than that good moment. He almost immediately was collapsed in on. So I want to see maybe a little more pressure from the Yanis, from the jungle, to make sure the Yanis has some room. Same thing from Aquarius, maybe, to just make sure that they have a wider berth for their carries to make sure they can actually do the carry role.
And I like Gamma on Amir, but he got bullied in that last game. I think that's an undeniable fact, too, so wonder the adjustment is there. Looks like the call, though, is still for this Wukong. So far, aside from this Sobek ban, these drafts are very, very similar here coming into game number 2, Core Miser. They still go on either Serket, but now it's a Khepri for them in the support role. So that's one of the first kind of big adjustments we're seeing here from him. It was obviously the Sobek in that spot last time. Does limit some of that offensive potential that was being used by Gino to bully out Crimson and force his cooldown sometimes single-handedly. But Khepri's still obviously super strong, going to improve that dive with the Scarab's Blessing.
Yeah, and, like, I'm looking at the in-combat healing from Guan Yu already. Like, that's going to make your team fight very smooth and clean. Add in safety from Khepri, add in Merket's mobility, no, Serket's mobility even, and you have a very safe team here from the Herculean Hoofs. And once again, like, so it's weird to me, like, banning out the Ymir makes sense, but going back to the Kumba, like, maybe the Winter Dogs just have a really good Kumba. Gamma must be really good at Kumba to make it worthwhile for them, because otherwise it just feels like a really weird, slightly off ban to see in this area. But I'm having trouble. Look, like Heimdall, Wukong, Yanis, like all of those are great gods, man, but they didn't play to their capabilities. I'm looking over at the Hoofs, even though technically they're not all the #1 picks. Now with Chernobog, maybe they are starting to get all #1 picks. It's just hard to side with the Winter Dogs here.
Yeah, this Chernobog feels almost like just a flat-out improvement. I think there were some times, though, where the Chiron caused some problems. We saw ultimates being used for the CC immunity when Andy would come in with that Ragnarok. We saw the cleanses, long-range damage. So maybe you want to take some of that away, as it's Kuzenbo instead this time for the Winter Dogs, instead of that Ymir, with the Ymir banned out over there by the Hoofs. But how could Chernobog not just be a blanket improvement in most cases, you'd think, even over the great performance to be had on the Chiron? But they're going to need this Kuzenbo to be really strong. This is not nearly so far as strong on the setup. Big freeze from Amir and walls to cut him off. Plus setup. But Naja, again, is pure setup. It's different setup, maybe even a little bit easier, a little bit low committal. Maybe that's not even necessarily true. Naja's got to get in there too. How do you like the Naja with the Giannis still, when it felt like that was kind of the big problem in Game 1, was connecting the setup and the mid lane? And how do I not acknowledge that we are outright distracted here now as well, Court?
Well, yeah, no, Katie just took Bellini outside, so Lala is distraught. But yeah, the Kuzenbo, Naja, like, the setup is there, but like you said, is it going to matter in the grand scheme of things when Yanis Crimson was left out to dry anyway, right? Like, is it going to be the setup they need, or are they going to fall apart here? Like, those are the problems I'm starting to see. I had mentioned the Thoth in last picks and bans, so I like seeing that locked in here on the other side. I think the Hoofs are playing to their strengths right now, and that's something that we haven't gotten to see from them for a few weeks. Whereas on the other side, I'm seeing a good draft, a really solid composition, but if Winter Dogs play the way they just did, it's not going to get anything done. If they can revamp their style into this, we'll have a much more interesting game too. There's a lot of good setup, a lot of good carry potential, but I'm looking at a late game comp through and through, like Naja, maybe level 5 is when we start to see it really pop off, when the ult comes through, Yanis follow up and things like that, but they are definitely set up, follow through with the Yanis and the Heimdall, waiting for those late game fights where they're grouped up.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they have a little bit of duo pressure early on with this Kuzenbo, but aside from that, I'm with you, right? The Hoofs should have a chance to maybe get involved a little bit sooner. We'll see. Wouldn't mind both of these teams kind of waiting for some items to come online, in all honesty, so maybe a little bit of a slower one here. But Gore, I got to see this combo for the Winter Dogs, I think, prove it here in this game number 2, because it is rather similar. It's not the Ragnarok bring them back. It is take them up to 1 point, know where they're landing on the back of this Naja setup. And that mid B3 is going to be critical too, right? How do Kuzenbo, Naja, and Giannis kind of function? Going to be a big one coming into this. So we'll get our chance to see. All the answers will be laid bare. Let's go into game number 2, see how it works out.
The Winter Dogs obviously not feeling like the Giannis was the issue or the Heimdall was the issue. And I think I tend to agree here, Mifflin. The Giannis, in the moments where it was able to operate, I thought had an okay game. And same with the Heimdall. The issue was they just did not have the space to operate there. in game number 1. Aquarius, top damage in the game after game 1. No surprise they go back. The Winter Dogs go back to the Sun Wukong pick. The big pivot, I think, is this Naja pick instead of the Fenrir. So more immediate, more consistent setup potentially for Endinster out of the jungle.
Could be, and make it a lot easier for Crimson to get that space, to get involved. I think that Gamma going towards this Kuzenbo rather than going back to the Ymir could also help out a little bit with that. We could see a lot less focus from this Kuzenbo on actually engaging fights themselves and rather using that ultimate, the Watery Grave, to create space for his team to peel out this dive that the Herculean Hoofs have. Snoopy ults into your backline. Well, you know where he's going. Should be easy to lock him down. Baskin never dashes aggressively, and we know he will. Baskin loves to play an aggressive thought style. Kuzenbo going to be able to get in his face as well and make it a lot harder for him to operate. So keep your eyes on the Winter Dog support in these team fights.
I'm interested to see what Baskin is able to do on this Thoth as well. Late on into game number 1, Baskin and Crimson met a few times in 1v1s. Baskin won handily. Pushback from Gamma. Beads from Snoopy. That'll keep him alive in this fight. Yuji with the knockback immunity. Beads from both hunters get used early on into the matchup here. And we're at a point now, Mifflin, where for a while the kind of thought was that Khepri is sort of this, maybe along the same lines as Geb, a kind of concede pressure every single time and no chance at finding these big engages. It's a slower pluck, but there's still a pluck, there's still a root, there's still a chance for Snoopy and Gino to find pressure in this lane up against a difficult lane in a Heimdall and a Kuzenbo.
It's going to be hard to find pressure insofar as wave, but kill pressure, I think, could go either way, is what I was going to say, and then I immediately look over, and the Herculean Hooves have established immense pressure. It seems like the Winter Dog's a little bit scared to step up here inside of the duo lane, but for now, it's the early game. Duo lane's not really where the narrative should be spelled. I think it's going to come down to these junglers, and already Annister trying to reprise his performance, getting aggressive in mid.
Whoa! Oh my, just a couple more auto attacks and Baskin is dead, and Crimson will portal on through, and Baskin is dead indeed. That's what we talk about when we say early pressure from this Naja. Pluck back through. Gamma will survive, but has to use his dash defensively there. But over in the mid lane, Anderson already making his impact. Crimson already matching, I think, his kill total from game number 1. If not, feeling good with the way that game 2 has started here. Getting early pressure onto Baskin, rarely a bad thing.
Yeah, rarely happens as well. Baskin falling down there could really slow down the pace that the Who's were hoping to set for themselves, but don't count him out just yet. Baskin, no stranger to being first blooded or getting first bloods. Man's been playing this game at a competitive level for an incredibly long time, and the Who's can at least lean on this. Use the pressure they've established in duo to immediately strip away that purple, and then rotate back in a lane safely. Nothing really Winter Dogs could have done there. That wave took so long to clear. Now, the Who's fall back, clear their own purple, and they've established themselves a nice little lead.
Now it's up to Masked to help out in the mid lane here just a little bit. More immediate kill pressure, maybe, from this Naja until Masked is able to get that ultimate online. I say that, but we saw some early pressure there in game number 1. But Masked kind of lived rent-free in the backline of the Winter Dogs, I felt like, there in game 1. So that's got to be the big pivot here, Mifflin, as Annister goes back to the mid lane, eats a tower shot. Baskin 2/3 HP after that. And so still pressure from Annister over in the mid lane. The big question that we've talked about so far has been the engage and keeping Crimson in a spot where he can capitalize on his ultimate a little bit better, find big damage. So the setup has been the talking point. There's also got to be some concern, though, that Mast and Meerkat are getting their picks back from game 1. 2 picks that did so well at diving into that backline. So Crimson and Yuji, their worries kind of have to continue, I think, from game 1 here into game 2.
Expanded even a little bit, Dave. I mean, sure, you got the exact same divers, but now they've got that safety net inside of Scarab's Blessing. Sure, Mast was living rent-free last game. Even if in game 2, Winter Dogs decide, all right, we can't let Mast find these 1v1s up against Yuji. We can't let Mast be constantly jumping into our Yanis. Let's turn and burn them. Well, you turn around, you start burning, and all of a sudden Scarab's Blessing is dropped, and it buys the time for Mast to have the rest of his team rejoin him in the back line, as well as make sure that he doesn't fall down. So it's going to be a lot harder for the Winter Dogs to find their spots here, but as you already highlighted, the Winter Dogs do come into this match with a slightly better engage pattern, and it's going to be very consistently burning beads at a lower commitment than Ragnarok.
Mast. Let's see if he waits out Aquarius. Aquarius is always going to go back towards his tower with that Somersault Cloud. Safety net, though, for Aquarius down just a little bit. or down, not just a little bit, down for a little bit. Snoopy will ult back in onto Gamma. That's good for a purple buff invade here from the Winter Dogs. Gets dropped down. Gino picks up the buff. Yuji not able to participate, so the pressure continues over here on the left-hand side of the map. 1 level lead over for Snoopy. Devourer's Gauntlet completed, though, by Yuji there as well. Just a couple stacks ahead. Snoopy will be, by the time Yuji gets back in there into lane. That's something maybe the Winter Dogs look to correct next time the purple buff comes up. Let's see if Annenster can rotate over and give him some help.
Yeah, we saw a similar strategy from the Winter Dogs last time. They were focusing on invading that blue buff, and it forced the Hoofs to consistently make those 4 or 5-man rotations on the defense. Winter Dogs, as of 5 minutes, have not decided to make that same correction that the Hoofs did in Game 1 instead. Kind of leaving Yuji to his own devices, saying, alright, well, if you want purple buff, secure it yourself, because we're busy elsewhere. And so far, he has only had 1 purple buff this game, 2 or 3 successful invades from the Hoofs. But Winter Dogs starting to make their rotations, see if maybe they could find a kill here.
Through Space and Time is used as a rotational tool and sends a couple members over towards Snoopy. Snoopy, the ability to go in and out of that wall on the Chernobog pick, ever so important. Annenster takes so much damage, has to ult away himself. The Hoofs bring everyone except for Meerkat. The chase is on. Do they have the ability to close this gap? Taunt back through. Gamma's the one who gets caught out and then launched back into the rest of the Hoofs. The root is there and the damage is as well. Baskin grabs this kill. It's another pull back, but Yuji has the ultimate. That connects over onto Gino. Not sure how low his health bar is going to be. Does not use the Scarab's Blessing. What trigger discipline here from Gino, and it goes on to Mast. It's a perfect dive from the Hoofs, and they end up getting a couple.
You know, Dave, I'm kind of like a Scrooge for the word perfect. I'm that college professor that only ever give you a 99 because there's no such thing as perfection, but I think you hit the nail on the head there, man. Fantastic, just tower aggro swapping there. We saw the minute that he was sent to Niflheim, Gino resets the tower. Snoopy waits until right before he lands to walk in and take it up for him, which allows him to maintain the Scarab's Blessing ultimate cooldown and gives Mast the opportunity to re-dive into the tower and find yet another kill. Herculean Hoofs, man, that is teamwork that you don't get to see too often.
That's right. Now it's how can we leverage that into a lead here in the early game, because that just catches the Hoofs back up in gold. Maybe a teeny bit ahead here. A couple hundred gold is all you're really looking at 7.5 minutes in. XP 300 or so. So not a massive lead on the back end of a 3-man tower dive. Solo laners left alone over there in solo. So the XP not really swinging. Nobody was really left out of that fight. Everyone was either on one side of the map or the other. But that gives the Hoofs a great position here to feel a little bit more comfortable. Snoopy continues to outbuild those stacks on the Devourer's Gauntlet. A small thing that might make an immediate impact here in a little while. Final Judgment misses Crimson, but now it's Annenster up into the sky. Windfire Wheels has caught out onto one, and Annenster goes down, but look at the collapse now from the rest of the Hoofs. It's a 2-for-1 trade that the Hoofs will happily take.
Overcommitment there from Crimson. Could have just been a 1-for-1 trade. The ultimate through Space and Time was enough to find that kill on the landing from the Windfire Wheels, but he goes through the portal himself and gives up his life in exchange. Mast finding value for his squad, trades out his life for 2. I'm sure Herculean Hoofs feeling just fine with that one. And already 8 minutes in, they've started to establish a small gold lead for themselves. Nearly 1,000 gold in favor of the Chaos team. Last time around, the Winter Dogs were able to establish 1,000, 2,000 gold lead and maintain it for the first 20 minutes. Hoofs on a much quicker pace this time around.
That's right, and Baskin has participated in all 5 of the kills. Plucked back onto Yuji, who has to use his ultimate defensively. We're seeing the same thing now from Yuji. I feel like that we saw on Crimson in Game 1, where it feels like that Heimdall ultimate in the more recent times I've seen it used have been trying to escape the engage. A couple have connected, notably that tower dive that Gino was able to survive, but something to consider moving forward, that Yuji's had to use that ultimate defensively a handful of times. Don't worry, though, the Heimdall still has that scale potential into the mid, into the late game. But the card's definitely starting to stack against the Winter Dogs the more and more these small skirmishes go up in favor of the Hoofs. Then you have to worry about Mifflin, this kind of global rotational presence that Snoopy is going to have on this Chernobog. Fighting starts to break out on one side of the map. Snoopy will be able to join the fray. It's been tough, though, for Gamma, I think. Look, Gino's participated in all 5 kills as well, and Gamma just hasn't been able to find that same engage, that same aggression potential that the Hoofs support has.
No, Gamma certainly not able to maintain the same pace as Gino has this game, but Gino has always got the numbers advantage when he shows up to a fight. If you see this Kepri, you better believe someone's behind him, except for this scenario. Gino alone goes for the purple buff invade, thinks better of it, immediately walks away. Gamma not quite able to find that CC, but does at least create the space to make sure they're able to get one of their buffs for themselves. And now, Big Yuji, second purple buff of the game, 10 minutes in, able to close up that level gap slightly, but still, Snoopy 2 levels up, someone on the side of Winter Dogs, and I'm keeping my eye on Anister. Likely needs to head over there and trying to shut down this Chernobog before he starts using that ultimate to really start rotating around the map.
All right, man, it's a rapid-fire start from Anister that's now slowed down as the Hoofs have put out the more recent bout of pressure. Mast also has participated in all 5 kills. Snoopy just 1 assist shy, and then of course the Soul Laners, triple goose eggs for them. We're going to leave them on an island, farm up a little bit. We've seen this story before in game number 1. Hoofs feeling confident enough to start up the Greater Scorpion, and why not when you've been putting out map pressure the way you have. But it's going to be an early Gold Fury spawn here in this game, 11 or so minutes in. That's going to be the big first objective here for the Hoofs. Steal potential now there for both teams with Crimson's ultimate can send that flying, as well as Baskin, the final judgment from range, can steal away one of those objectives, but not the same burn potential maybe, Mifflin, that the Hoofs had in game 1.
No, the Who's going to commit themselves a little bit more so towards actually doing the objective itself. Maybe we see Meerkat make an earlier rotation than he did in Game 1 to make use of that Talu Assault to strip away the defense, but last time around, Baskin was almost able to do 50% of a Gold Fury or a Pyromancer with just his first ability rotation in that fire stance. Now, it's going to take a lot more commitment from them, a lot longer to clear out these objectives. Instead, I think both teams are going to keep their eyes on the 5v5 and the skirmish and the dance around the Gold Fury, rather than actually going for a sneaky play themselves. It has spawned up 11.5 minutes into this game, and already the Hooves have got a pretty decent amount of vision advantage on this left-hand side of the map. Winter Dogs going for some more periphery wards, just hanging around the Gold Free. They should be able to spot once the Hooves do start to group up around it, but not it itself. It's going to be a tough one here.
Right.
Neither team feeling confident enough to really move in for it.
I mean, it'd have to be very unique pathing from the Hooves to avoid those wards on the backside entrance to the Fury Pit, but I suppose there is a world where that does happen. Crimson has to use the beads here because Gino just walks at him. And so Crimson now, no beads for what could be a pivotal Gold Fury fight in the coming minutes. The pressure continues from this Kepri pick in a world where you got a Kepri on one side and a Kuzumbo on the other. If you were to tell me that Kepri is the one burning more beads and putting out more pressure 12.5 minutes in, I would have laughed at you, but that's been the case. Feels like Gino's been all over the place, burning beads, setting up fights, and helping his team start to build up a bit of a lead here. Aquarius does have a 1-level lead over Meerkat here in the solo lane, so that's something for the Winter Dogs to hang their hat on. Maybe it's the Sun Wukong that can make the difference.
It could be. Aquarius did put out a lot of damage in Game 1, and once he was able to make those rotations in the team fights, he certainly changed the face of it. But there's one clear differentiating factor between these two soul laners that we got to see really come to fruition in Game 1, and only one of them can heal the team, right? Sun Wukong sure can heal himself, but Meerkat can be able to spread that wealth for the rest of his squad. So the longer these team fights go, once we do get that 5-on-5 grouping, the more it's going to favor the Herculean Hoofs. Not only do they have the healing advantage, but Thoth, being a long-range artillery striker, he's just going to hit you from further away than you can hit him. Poke advantage, likely going to go the way of the Hoofs as well. Winter Dogs are going to have to win out on the initial engagement if they want a clean win in these team fights.
That's right. Snoopy, feeling like a gambling man here today, is going to roll the dice on the crit chance with the Wind Demon right after the Devourer's Gauntlet. And the Executioner on the other side for Big Yuji. So if those crits start swinging, Snoopy's going to feel very happy about his choices here in these fights. Oracle's taken now by the Hoofs. Gamma going to send out a Nene just to do a little bit of damage over onto Gino. Both teams, though, Mifflin, seemingly happy with slowing this game down just a little bit. Winter Dogs had all this pressure mounting very early on, right off the bat. Herculean Hoofs swing back for 5 swift kills. And now both teams just kind of taking a deep breath, scaling on both sides. Maybe it makes you feel confident, regardless of which team you're on, in your ability to win these fights into the mid-game.
It seems like it, but the Who's kind of sick of that pace, almost as if they're listening in, Dave. They say, all right, you know what, Gold Free, we want that now. And sure, they don't have the same burn potential, but if all 5 of them are allowed to group up for free, they'll still burn it out pretty quickly. That was alive for about 5 or 6 seconds. Winter Dogs nowhere to be seen on the defense, and now the gold deficit's really starting to grow. 1,200 now in favor of the Herculean Hooves. Winter Dogs finally starting to group up, but too little too late. Now the Hoofs are actually getting aggressive again, looking to see if maybe they can go for a bit of an invade here. Think better of it, fall back. Clean play for the Chaos team. Now Winter Dogs gonna have to look to stem that bleeding. I think it's gonna be a little while until we see the Order side start to get proactive.
Well, the question always then remains, all right, if we're going to give up this Gold Fury for free because we don't have everyone there, what are we getting in return? Aquarius was able to push out the solo lane here, and the minions finished off the Tier 1 tower over here in solo. So the first tower of the game does go down. It's the 2-level lead, Sun Wukong, that gets that first tower, so no surprise there. That at least keeps some gold into the pockets of the Winter Dogs, so you give up the Fury for free. You get some map pressure over in solo. That opens up the door to Aquarius to maybe start to rotate in, make a difference in these fights a little bit easier, a little bit quicker than what Meerkat is able to do. With the 2-level lead, I'm hard-pressed to not get him involved, Aquarius involved, kind of ASAP here. I mean, this is as wide of a lead as you're going to have until you reach level 20, and then Meerkat is able to catch up a little bit quicker. So getting the Sun Wukong involved is going to be ever so important, but still no fighting over the last handful of minutes. Mast was happy with the way that the early game has gone for him. Crimson has beads burnt just a moment ago. They were able to come back up off of cooldown. And all that fighting, all that skirmishing, Gold Fury, towers, all that back and forth built up about a 500 gold lead here for the Hoofs. XP differential probably teetering on both edges, 2 levels in solo, 2 levels in mid. So Baskin now, the Herculean Hoofs, maybe the character you got to play around.
And Baskin certainly putting out damage. Only one of the Hieroglyphic Assault's going to be able to land there on the Gamma, but still able to take out about 10% of his HP. Aquarius starts to make his rotation over, thinking maybe there's going to be a skirmish in the center of the map. Then it gets immediately caught out by Meerkat, routes him on that rotation. And keep your eyes on the Hoofs, man. It feels like they really are just biding their time, trying to find that one pick to start this match up in earnest. Fire Giant, Greater Scorpion getting started up by Mass. Kind of deja vu what happened around that Greater Scorpion on the left-hand side. This time, though, only turning out 10% of his HP means that he can keep moving forward. If Gino's able to find that abduct, maybe Annister forced to use some defensive relics this time around, though. Not going to be how that one pans out. Expect the Winter Dogs not to allow Herculean Hoofs to take another free objective, where I'm expecting a true 5-on-5 engagement, not only around the Fire Giant itself, but also the Pyromancer. The Order team really needs to keep their eyes on stemming that bleeding. We are only hovering at around 1,000 gold deficit at this point, but that's a slippery slope, man. They got to start getting proactive somewhere on the map.
FG is here, Pyromancer is as well. Meerkat's opted for the same start to his build as game number 1. This Guan Yu is going to be damn near impossible to kill with the way that he started off. Certainly feels like Reinforced Greaves, Breastplate of Valor, Caduceus Shield. Feels good for Meerkat there. A couple shifter shields, hybrid tankiness for the Winter Dogs between solo and jungle. On the Sun Wukong, that's kind of the way you want your build to go, to be able to put out damage. Top of the damage charts, as we saw in game number 1, is Aquarius. Just kind of free poke on this Guan Yu. So much talk about the damage numbers, certainly inflated by just the way that lane goes. Still a 2-level lead there over for him. Baskin again, though, picks up the Chalice of the Oracle. In a game this slow, maybe something that small is the right thing to talk about, where Baskin has been top of the ward's place charts, kept him nice and safe there in the mid lane. If you sense that all this pressure is impending from the Winter Dogs jungle, maybe it just makes sense.
Yeah, Baskin got first one and said, yeah, it won't catch it happening to me again, and started warding up the map pretty aggressively. 14 dropped in the last 18 minutes. The same cannot be said of Fighting! He's forced to use the ultimate defensively, and he's burning slowly to that poison.
Oh, but where is Snoopy going to go with his ultimate? Mid lane is the answer. I was fingers crossed he was going to go in on Crimson, and probably wasn't going to be the right play, but I was hoping he would do it. Aquarius into the Somersault Cloud. Everyone from the Hoofs groups up underneath the one area there, and Aquarius can drop down, blink away, stays alive. All this pressure is out. Baskin, no ultimate to try to clean up the kill there. Now Meerkat cavalry charge. 1 by 1, Hoofs are praying for a pick here. A great push back by Gamma, and 1 by 1 the Winter Dogs survive. The Hoofs finally get the kill. It's on to Annister here. Now looking at the tier 2 tower. Snoopy's going to be able to do enough damage to get this one low pretty quickly. A root, a pluck back in, puts Gamma in an awkward spot, but the tower is the objective, and the Hoofs have got it.
Winter Dogs at no point in that team fight were actually had their feet planted. They never put up a fighting stance. They were never grouped up as 5, and Herculean Hoofs absolutely punish them for it. Sure, took them a little while to find that initial pick, but they did strip away the Tier 1 tower for free, almost as an afterthought as they started their Tier 2 dive. Winter Dogs could not quite put up a defense there. Lose out on the Tier 1, Tier 2, Gold Fury as well. What do they get in exchange? Just the Pyromancer this time around, and that's not even guaranteed with Baskin rotating in. Will go the way of the Order side team here, but 3,000 gold favoring the Chaos, as well as Fire Giant being up. Gotta imagine they're just going to head back to base, spend that gold that's lining their pockets, regroup, and force another fight on the Winter Dogs.
That's right. The Hoofs now, with the largest lead we've seen so far in this game, right around 2,500. They just are chasing every one of the Winter Dogs down. It feels like, or it did feel like in that previous fight, they finally were able to get a couple Winter Dogs stuck around underneath the Tier 2 tower. Unfortunately, it did not work out for them this time. Crimson was able to get off some damage in that fight. I think that's an improvement over what we saw there in Game 1. But the damage chart's starting to get much more disparate. I don't know how you pronounce that word properly. I probably shouldn't say it.
You got it.
Disparate? I was close. All right, so I got it.
You nailed it.
A lot more disparate than they were in game number 1. Remember, it was Aquarius way far and ahead thanks to a lot of that solo lane poke. And then everyone was kind of grouped up somewhere in the middle. Now you're starting to see Baskin and Meerkat run away with things here. Mass takes effectively no damage from Andenster, but you can't say the same for the Naja, who's down to about 3rd HP. Serket will walk her way away. She'll survive, and now maybe it's an FG call 21 minutes in.
No,
it's not.
instead, going over to the right-hand side. Look, Aquarius still draws breath, and that is something that Hoofs are taking personally. Somersault Cloud is going to be forced, and he goes over the wall, but what's waiting for him? It's Baskin. Nice taunt. Gets him out of the bird. Aquarius' days are numbered.
Yeah, no chance for Aquarius to survive here. Gamma's gone in, but he's gone in alone. It's another root from Gino here, and it's another death for the Winter Dog support. 5 strong Winter Dogs working down the right-hand side of the map. You got to deal with the Tier 1 tower first. They just want blood. They want the kill. It's a taunt in and an ult out from Andenster. And now the Herculean Hoofs are going to have to back away, take down the Tier 1 tower before they even consider Tier 2.
Meanwhile, Crimson in the center of the map, at least able to take away a Tier 1 tower. This might be the most split-push-focused Yanis play I've seen in any set ever. Crimson always looking to find something on the map. This time, it is going to at least expose a Tier 2. Looks like he's lining up that ultimate, going for the steal.
Crimson hit it, but no good on the steal. Herculean Hoofs delay it, realizing that the ultimate is going to fly in. And well played now by the Chaos side, starting to run away here with this game. Feels like Crimson has been relegated to split push duty after the fights go awry on Game 1 and here in Game 2. He got a Tier 1 tower there in mid, at least for his troubles. Now the Tier 2 tower, or the Tier 1, excuse me, and left, starting to get looked at by the minions for the Winter Dogs. Herculean Hoofs did wonders there in the mid lane. Mid lane Phoenix is open. A couple towers here on the left-hand side might be the objective.
Yeah, I think the Hoofs got a pretty clear focus here. Group up on the left, maybe have mass split push down the center of the map, but they've got time to work with. 3 minutes left on this Fire Giant buff means that really, they can do just about no wrong on the map. It's going to be a defense, potentially a soft one on a Tier 2 tower from the Winter Dogs, but taking a peek at their positioning yet again, it's a slow rotation over. Might just be relegating themselves towards defending under the Phoenix. Don't keep your eyes on the gold too much here, as they are stripping away Tier 1s, 2s, and potentially a gold free once that spawns. Gold in pocket makes not for a lead, so it might be a little bit more than it actually is on the board. Winter Dogs only effectively really down 2.5, 3,000 gold here, despite what the numbers are showing. Herculean Hoofs, though, undeterred, starting to work their way forward. Crimson playing around the side, might be able to find a flank here, but that's tough positioning. If he gets spotted out, he's going to lose his life.
Baskin maybe privy. Let's see what Mask can do here. 2v1. Well, he can half HP Andenster. Snoopy is in. That was a through space in time. Did not get the kill onto Mask. Instead, 3rd HP onto the Serket. Big ultimate now defensively down for the Winter Dogs. Crits ringing through, and Gamma gets melted by Baskin, Snoopy, and the rest of the Herculean Hoofs. Same for Aquarius. Gino uses the Scarab's Blessing on himself, but now it's Andenster, Crimson, and Yuji back on defense. Mask blinks on in. Doesn't find the engage he was looking for, but here comes the cavalry, and Andenster gets stunned down in the back line. Mid lane Phoenix falls. Herculean Hoofs continue to march forward.
Blink in from Meerkat, can't quite find the slow.
Nice
Ultimate
beads.
defensively from Yuji, able to get him out of there. Good beads to avoid the CC, and Herculean Hoofs are playing it slow. They want this first win of the season pretty badly, crossing their T's and dotting their I's. Left side Phoenix going down here, and now they're starting to keep their eyes on the Titan.
Mash down low. Nice double portal there from Crimson, but it's the Titan being looked at. Gino being swung on by Yuji. There's some massive damage from this Heimdall, and Baskin nearly grabs a kill on the back end onto Crimson. Instead, it's mid, left Phoenix down. Fire Giant still has 1 minute and 12 seconds left on it. Gamma blinks on forward. No Gino now in this fight. Annister sash over onto Baskin, who gets Windfire Wheels on the back end. Great Aegis there from Snoopy to mitigate all of that damage from Crimson.
Still
this
alive?
Turnhog now has to do serious damage in the back line of the fight. How is Snoopy living? I can't believe it. Crimson dies as well. Winter Dogs thought they had done something, and instead, the Hoofs have turned around the damage. They've turned around the fight. Mifflin, if they get these kills, they might just end the game.
Aquarius lands from the somersault cloud, immediately gets chased out. Baskin taken up into the air by the Windfire Wheels. Could not finish that kill onto him. Instead, he turns the fight around for his squad. Beads used by Sun Wukong does get him out of there alive. Mass trades his life.
Well, now it's Snoopy in onto the Titan. The rest of the Herculean Hooves are there as well, and game number 2 will come to a close. The Hooves are going to win it. They go 2-0 here in this best of 3. They get their first win of the phase.
Baskin at the very end there trades out that alternate timeline almost as a flex. Maybe I thought he'd use it to survive the Windfire Wheels combo. Nah, he still held on to that one. That was raw player skill inside the jungle. That's a clean one, and that's the Hooves we'd been expecting to see all year, isn't it, Dave? Where they've been at the last couple of weeks. Better late than never, if you ask me. Glad to have them back.
Yeah, you don't need to clean out your ears. That is somehow this roster's first win of the phase so far here in the SCC. Hopefully, all uphill from here for this squad. Great 2-0 win here for the Herculean Hooves. We'll take a break and be right back to break it down.
Welcome back to the SCC. It's Finch and Gormizer here as the Herculean Hoofs get their very first win of this phase of the SCC. Doesn't seem right. I wouldn't have predicted that way back at the beginning of this one, but I think I have to give it to them. This was a dominant win. I was skeptical about the Merlin back in Game 1, about the Thoth in Game 2, but somehow my man Baskin picks 2 gods with no CC immune in their kits, up against Finra and Naja, and then finds the win anyway. It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah, that's the thing. You have a very clean, survivable mid lane, surprisingly survivable mid lane in that. And
yes.
Just that the CC never seemed to be there. And at least in game one, like I said, when we were looking at that one, it felt like 28 minutes of a lead at least built up for Winter Dogs that eventually fell apart because of team fights that maybe just weren't clean later on. This one felt pretty much over from the get-go. I mean, 7 minutes in, we really start to see
from this fight.
a big
Yes.
lead get picked up. Yeah, pretty much from this moment forward, it was just all on the side of the Herculean Hoofs. And I was hoping to see a little bit more coming down from the Winter Dogs as time went on. It made sense that, yeah, okay, you have a couple of slip-ups, your draft should look better, but a lot of the problems that were there in game one kind of persisted here in game number 2. Good groupings from the Herculean Hoofs made it too difficult for them to reply. We could see, Crimson not able to get too much done. Here's another example of a just very split up fight from the Winter Dogs, while it's a very nice grouping and good target selection from the Herculean Hoofs. It's exactly what I wanted to see out of the Hoofs, I think, for the last few years. Or not years, how about weeks that we've been watching them and kind of missing out on these wins. But it maybe isn't the way I would have wanted them to come upon this win, right? Like, it seemed like it was a very monumental occasion that just kind of got swept under the rug because they did it so cleanly.
They did, and a lot of it just didn't come together for them. It's a little bit of just good play from the Hoofs, I think. It looks like Crimson does next to 0 damage in that fight after the base siege when they push out, but that's because Through Space and Time got Aegis, and Unstable Vortex got Aegis right on the landing from that Windfire wheel. So sometimes things just kind of didn't quite go their way, but other times it's exactly as you said. This team of Winter Dogs was a little too disjointed to be so reliant on one core combo, right, of Naja set up into the follow-up there from Leonis for it to just basically not be there all game long. And that's kind of my complaint with the draft style from the two beginnings. If that's the style, then it feels like Crimson can't be split pushing or a solo agent. He's got to be there with the team.
Yeah. And I think that was the biggest issue. I think Miff even said it at one point where he said, this is the most I've ever seen a Yanis split pushing ever in his life. And let's face it, Miff's played a lot of Smite, man. He's played a lot of Yanis, or against a lot of Yanis at least, too. So it's definitely interesting to see that dynamic come out.
Let's go ahead and take a look then at the standings. We do Tiburones and Artists will be up at the top, but that loss for the Winter Dogs creates this 1 and 3 sort of pile up at the bottom. Fishies will be playing later on. We'll get to see if they join or if they improve. And this is a look at when those games will be happening. So the Fishies one will be on Sunday before the SPL. We'll have Snake Hunters Elysium that rounds out EU happening Saturday at 11 before the SPL. That's going to be happening for basically all of our SPL matches. We'll have the SCC. So make sure that you guys are coming in a little early for the SPL so you can see the SCC stuff happening too. I'm talking to the right people though. These are my SCC stands that are here right now. And we appreciate y'all for making sure you're here. Gore, this now though is a big point for the Hoofs, I think, to start building up some momentum to get this first win.
Yeah, I'm excited to see, again, it kind of feels like this was the moment to get their heels dug into the dirt and start pushing back. You're a team that was 0-3, now 1-3, and like you had just highlighted, looking at the bottom of the standings, there's a huge cluster down there, but it's not that difficult to attain a top 2 spot right now. I mean, granted, the top 2 are 3-0, but a couple of losses for them, a couple of wins for you, all of a sudden everybody's tied once again, so I think this is a good spot to see them maybe start climbing up in the ranks.
Well, make sure you stick around here. We have the waiting room leading into the SPL. We'll break down all kinds of SPL stuff coming up next. It's going to look, the streams are going down for a little bit, but we're just getting everything sorted, so stick around. Make sure you check out the waiting room coming up next.